The glass elevator climbs 37 floors above downtown Los Angeles as Pastor John Martinez checks his phone one final time before stepping into what looks more like a Silicon Valley boardroom than a sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer panoramic views of the sprawling metropolis, while comfortable leather chairs arranged in small circles replace traditional wooden pews. At 11:15 a.m. on a Sunday morning, this space is packed with tech entrepreneurs, entertainment executives, and 20-something professionals who've never set foot in a traditional church but drive 45 minutes through LA traffic to be here. This is reality LA, and it represents something that urban sociologists thought was impossible just 20 years ago: a thriving religious community in the heart of one of America's most secular cities. But here's what makes this story truly remarkable. Martinez isn't just competing against other churches for congregants. He's competing against yoga studios offering spiritual wellness, meditation apps promising mindfulness, co-working spaces providing community, therapy practices delivering personal transformation, and entertainment venues supplying transcendent experiences. In a city where you can find almost anything at any hour, what makes thousands of urban professionals choose to spend their Sunday mornings in church? The answer reveals a hidden ecosystem of urban religious innovation that's reshaping American Christianity in ways that suburban churches never imagined. These aren't your grandmother's congregations transplanted to downtown locations. They're entirely new forms of religious community that have cracked the code on something that stumped religious leaders for decades: how to build authentic spiritual communities in environments designed around individual consumption, professional networking, and cultural sophistication. The transformation began in the late 1990s when demographers noticed something unexpected in America's largest cities. While rural and suburban churches struggled with declining attendance and aging congregations, certain urban churches were experiencing explosive growth among demographics that pollsters had written off as permanently secular. Young professionals who'd never been religious were joining congregations in Manhattan, penthouses, and Chicago lofts. Creative types who'd rejected traditional religion were finding meaning in churches that met in converted warehouses and renovated theaters. But these weren't flukes or fads. They were early indicators of a massive shift in how urban Americans approached spirituality, community, and purpose. The same forces that made cities attractive to ambitious young professionals — diversity, creativity, intellectual stimulation, and constant change — were also creating spiritual hunger that traditional suburban churches couldn't satisfy, but innovative urban ones could. Consider Hillsong NYC, which launched in 2010 with a staff of 5 people and a budget smaller than most suburban churches spend on parking lot maintenance. Within 8 years, they were running multiple services in rented theaters across Manhattan, attracting over 8,000 attendees weekly, including celebrities, fashion designers, Wall Street executives, and artists whose presence generated international media attention. The secret wasn't flashy marketing or celebrity endorsements, though those certainly helped. The real breakthrough was understanding something fundamental about urban psychology that eludes most religious organizations. City dwellers don't choose churches the same way suburban families do. They choose them the way they choose restaurants, gyms, or professional networks, based on quality, relevance, convenience, and social utility. Pastor Carl Lentz, who led Hillsong NYC during its explosive growth phase, discovered this by accident during the church's first year. The congregation was meeting in a rented space in Union Square, competing with everything from farmers markets to political protests for attention. Lentz noticed that people weren't just attending services. They were staying afterward for hours, turning coffee conversations into business partnerships, romantic relationships, and creative collaborations. "I realized we weren't just running a church," Lentz later explained. "We were running a social infrastructure platform that happened to have spiritual content. People were coming for the community networking as much as the spiritual teaching." This insight led Hillsong to redesign their entire approach around what urban planners call third place dynamics, creating spaces that function as neither home nor work, but as social anchors that serve multiple community needs simultaneously. The model works because it solves several problems that plague urban life simultaneously. Young professionals struggling with social isolation find genuine community. Creative types seeking purpose beyond career advancement discover meaning-making frameworks. Entrepreneurs looking for trustworthy partners encounter networks built around shared values rather than pure self-interest. But the most successful urban churches go far beyond social networking. They've discovered that city dwellers hunger for experiences that suburban Christianity takes for granted. Silence in a noisy environment, reflection in a fast-paced culture, authentic relationships in a world of professional networking, and transcendent purpose in a society obsessed with individual achievement. Trinity Church Wall Street represents perhaps the most dramatic example of traditional religious institutions adapting to urban realities. Founded in 1698, Trinity owned some of Manhattan's most valuable real estate and could easily coast on its historical significance and financial resources. Instead, they've reinvented themselves as what religious scholars call an urban spiritual hub that serves everyone from homeless individuals to Fortune 500 executives. The transformation began when Trinity's leadership realized that their traditional Episcopal liturgy, while beautiful and historically significant, wasn't connecting with the traders, lawyers, and finance professionals who worked within blocks of their building. Rather than abandoning tradition entirely, they developed what they call contemplative lunch services, 20-minute gatherings that offer prayer, reflection, and community in the middle of the Wall Street workday. The lunch services attract over 1,000 people weekly, mostly financial professionals who describe them as essential for maintaining sanity and perspective in high-pressure careers. But Trinity's innovation goes deeper than convenient scheduling. They've created programming that addresses the specific spiritual challenges of urban professional life. Ethical decision-making in competitive environments, finding meaning in wealth accumulation, managing stress and anxiety, building authentic relationships despite professional demands. Hello, urban explorers and faith-curious minds. Welcome back to Professor Archive, where we dive deep into the unseen forces shaping modern American life. Before we continue exploring these fascinating urban religious innovations, I'm really curious about our global audience today. Where are you watching from right now? Are you perhaps in one of these big cities I'm describing? Maybe taking a break from your own urban hustle? Or are you viewing this from somewhere completely different? And here's something that might give us great insight. What do you do for work? Are you maybe one of those urban professionals who might be drawn to these communities? A sociologist studying urban trends, a pastor trying to understand modern ministry, or simply someone fascinated by how faith adapts to contemporary life? Your perspective probably influences how you're experiencing these stories. The emergence of dinner church movements reveals another dimension of urban religious innovation that addresses fundamental changes in how city dwellers build relationships and community. Traditional churches organize around weekly gathering models that assume participants have predictable schedules and stable social networks. Urban professionals often have neither. Dinner churches solve this problem by organizing religious community around shared meals that function as both social and spiritual experiences. Rather than asking busy professionals to add church attendance to their already overpacked schedules, these communities integrate spiritual practice into activities people already prioritize: eating, socializing, and building relationships. Pastor Veronica Goines launched Table Church in Oakland after realizing that traditional church models weren't reaching young professionals in the Bay Area tech industry. Her innovation was simple but profound: organize religious community around weekly dinners where spiritual conversation emerges naturally from shared meals rather than being imposed through formal programming. The model attracts software engineers, startup founders, and creative professionals who describe traditional church services as artificial and time-consuming, but find authentic spiritual community through weekly dinners where religious conversation flows naturally from food, friendship, and shared life challenges. The ancient church actually organized around meals, Goins explains. We think of Sunday morning services as traditional, but they're really modern inventions. Dinner churches are recovering older forms of religious community that work better in urban environments where people are hungry for authentic relationships. The success challenges assumptions about what makes religious programming relevant. Table churches attendees include people who'd never attended traditional churches, but find spiritual meaning through conversations about ethics, purpose, and transcendence that emerge naturally from shared meals with thoughtful people. The role of architecture and space design in urban church success reveals sophisticated understanding of how physical environments shape spiritual experience. Successful urban churches invest heavily in creating spaces that feel distinct from both corporate environments and traditional religious buildings while remaining accessible to people who might feel intimidated by conventional church architecture. The practice becomes an art form at churches like Journey Church in New York City, which meets in a converted loft space in Brooklyn that previously served as an artist's studio. The space combines industrial aesthetics with warm lighting, comfortable seating arrangements that encourage conversation, and flexible layouts that can accommodate everything from intimate worship services to community dinners to art exhibitions. Pastor Nelson Searcy explains the strategic thinking behind their space design. We want people to feel like they're entering something special and sacred, but not something foreign or intimidating. The goal is to create environments that urban professionals find both spiritually meaningful and culturally familiar. The investment pays off. Journey attracts artists, entrepreneurs, and creative professionals who describe the space as feeling like a spiritual coffee shop or a sacred co-working space, environments that combine the transcendence they seek with the aesthetic sensibilities they already appreciate. But the most innovative urban churches go beyond attractive spaces to create what architects call adaptive environments that serve multiple community functions throughout the week. Rather than maintaining religious buildings that sit empty most of the time, these churches design spaces that function as community centers, event venues, co-working spaces, and social service hubs. The approach maximizes both community impact and financial sustainability while creating what sociologists call ambient spirituality, religious presence that influences community life beyond formal religious programming. When churches serve as neighborhood hubs for multiple activities, they become integral parts of urban life rather than weekend additions to it. C3 Church in Brooklyn exemplifies this approach through their converted warehouse space that functions as a church on Sundays, a community event venue on weeknights, a co-working space for freelancers and entrepreneurs on weekdays, and an art gallery for local artists on rotating schedules. The integrated programming creates spiritual community that emerges naturally from shared space usage, rather than depending entirely on formal religious services. The financial innovation behind urban church success often surprises people familiar with traditional religious funding models. Suburban churches typically depend on member donations and perhaps some investment income from property ownership. Urban churches face dramatically higher real estate costs while serving populations that may have high incomes but also high expenses and often student debt that limits their giving capacity. The solution emerges through social enterprise models that generate revenue through services that align with congregational missions while providing sustainable funding for religious programming. Urban churches become business incubators, event venues, consulting services, and community development organizations that support themselves through market activities rather than depending entirely on charitable donations. Reality Church in San Francisco operates what they call a mission-driven business portfolio that includes a coffee shop, a co-working space, a digital marketing consultancy, and a small business development program. The enterprises employ church members, serve the broader urban community, and generate revenue that supports religious programming while reducing dependence on member donations. Pastor Dave Lomas argues that the integration actually strengthens rather than dilutes religious mission. When your church runs businesses that serve the community Monday through Saturday, your Sunday programming becomes more relevant because it's connected to practical ways faith intersects with work, economics, and community development. People see that spirituality isn't just weekend inspiration, but daily practice. The approach attracts entrepreneurs and business professionals who appreciate churches that demonstrate rather than just talk about values like integrity, service, and stewardship. When congregants see church leaders successfully managing businesses according to stated spiritual principles, it increases credibility for religious teaching about applying faith to professional challenges. The technology integration that successful urban churches embrace goes far beyond live streaming services or maintaining social media accounts. These communities recognize that urban professionals live digitally integrated lives where technology isn't a tool they use but an environment they inhabit. Religious community that doesn't acknowledge this reality feels artificial and irrelevant. Liquid Church in New Jersey has developed what they call phygital community, religious programming that seamlessly integrates physical gatherings with digital interactions in ways that enhance rather than replace face-to-face relationships. Members use apps to coordinate small group meetings, share prayer requests, organize volunteer activities, and continue spiritual conversations throughout the week. The innovation addresses a key challenge in urban religious community: how to maintain meaningful relationships when participants have unpredictable schedules, frequent travel, and demanding work commitments. Digital integration allows for spiritual community that adapts to urban lifestyles rather than demanding lifestyle changes that many urban professionals can't or won't make. Pastor Tim Lucas explains the strategic thinking. We're not trying to get people to live like their grandparents. We're trying to help them live faithfully within contemporary urban realities. Technology becomes a tool for spiritual formation rather than a distraction from it when it's integrated thoughtfully into community life. The approach particularly appeals to younger urban professionals who expect seamless digital integration in all aspects of life and find religiously communities that resist technology to be unnecessarily backward-looking and culturally out of touch. The social justice integration that characterizes many successful urban churches reflects both the political sensibilities of urban populations and the practical necessities of city life, where economic inequality, homelessness, and social problems are visible daily rather than abstract policy issues. Urban churches that thrive develop what religious scholars call embedded social action, service programs that flow naturally from urban location and community needs, rather than feeling like additional obligations imposed on busy professionals. When churches are located in diverse urban neighborhoods, social service becomes community engagement rather than charity work. The Washington National Cathedral in D.C. exemplifies this approach through programming that addresses issues urban professionals encounter daily: income inequality, affordable housing, immigration, racial justice, and environmental sustainability. Rather than treating these as political issues, the cathedral frames them as spiritual practices where urban Christians can live out religious values in their immediate community context. The integration attracts professionals who work in policy, law, education, and nonprofit sectors who appreciate religious communities that take urban challenges seriously, rather than treating them as abstract theological concepts. When churches demonstrate practical commitment to urban flourishing, they gain credibility with populations who might otherwise view religious institutions as irrelevant or even harmful to social progress. Bishop Marianne Edgar Boudet explains the cathedral's approach. We're not trying to provide spiritual escape from urban realities. We're trying to provide spiritual resources for engaging urban realities faithfully and effectively. That requires taking both scripture and sociology seriously. The programming attracts professionals who describe traditional suburban churches as spiritually escapist, but find urban churches that engage social issues to be spiritually challenging and personally relevant. The arts integration that successful urban churches embrace reflects both the creative populations of major cities and the human need for beauty, creativity, and transcendence that urban life often neglects despite its cultural richness. Cities offer abundant entertainment and cultural programming, but much of it is passive consumption rather than active creative participation. Urban churches fill this gap by creating opportunities for artistic participation that combines creative expression with spiritual formation. Rather than treating arts as decoration for religious programming, these communities make creative collaboration central to spiritual community. All Saints Church in Pasadena operates what they describe as sacred arts incubators that provide space, resources, and community for artists, musicians, writers, and creative professionals to develop work that explores spiritual themes while maintaining artistic integrity and cultural relevance. The programming attracts creative professionals who describe traditional churches as artistically stifling or culturally irrelevant, but find All Saints to offer creative opportunities that enhance rather than compromise their artistic development. Participants report that spiritual community with other creative professionals provides both artistic inspiration and spiritual grounding for work in competitive creative industries. Pastor Mike Kinman argues that arts integration serves essential urban ministry functions. Cities attract creative people who often struggle with questions of meaning, purpose, and authentic community. When churches provide opportunities for artistic collaboration around spiritual themes, we address all these needs simultaneously while creating culture that serves the broader urban community. The approach generates programming that attracts not just church members but broader urban cultural audiences, creating bridges between religious and secular communities that increase church visibility and cultural influence while serving urban cultural development. The mental health focus that characterizes innovative urban churches reflects both the high rates of anxiety and depression among urban professionals and the inadequacy of traditional religious approaches to psychological wellness that often ignore or dismiss mental health challenges. Urban churches that succeed develop sophisticated understandings of how spiritual practice can complement rather than replace therapeutic treatment while creating community support for people managing mental health challenges in high-pressure urban environments. Mosaic Church in Los Angeles has developed what they call spiritual wellness programming that integrates meditation practice, small group support, professional counseling referrals, and community care in ways that address mental health holistically rather than treating it as separate from spiritual formation. Pastor Erwin McManus explains the integration. Urban professionals face relationship challenges, work stress, social isolation, and existential questions that can't be addressed through weekend inspiration alone. Churches that succeed in cities provide comprehensive wellness resources that help people thrive psychologically and spiritually in demanding urban environments. The programming attracts professionals who describe traditional churches as psychologically naive, but find Mosaic's approach to be therapeutically sophisticated while remaining spiritually grounded. Participants report that spiritual community focused on wellness provides both practical support for managing urban stress and transcendent meaning that pure therapeutic approaches often lack. The approach requires churches to invest in staff training, professional partnerships, and programming that goes far beyond traditional religious education, to include mental health literacy, trauma awareness, and psychological first aid that equip religious communities to serve urban populations responsibly. The networking and professional development programming that successful urban churches provide reflects understanding that spiritual formation and career development aren't separate aspects of life for urban professionals, but integrated challenges that require coordinated approaches. Urban churches create what business researchers call values-based professional networks that provide career support, business partnerships, and professional development opportunities organized around shared spiritual commitments rather than pure self-interest. Reality Church in San Francisco operates monthly Kingdom business gatherings where entrepreneurs, executives, and creative professionals share expertise, develop partnerships, and support each other's ventures while exploring how spiritual values can guide business practices and career decisions. The programming attracts professionals who find secular networking to be superficial and transactional, but appreciate religious community that takes career challenges seriously as spiritual formation opportunities. Participants report developing business relationships, career opportunities, and professional mentorship through church connections, while maintaining integrity around values that might be compromised in purely secular professional networks. Pastor Dave Lomas argues that the integration serves essential urban ministry functions. Urban professionals spend most of their waking hours at work. If churches don't help people integrate faith and work, we're irrelevant to most of their lives. When we provide practical support for living faithfully in professional contexts, we demonstrate that spirituality isn't weekend escape, but daily practice. The approach generates what economists call social capital, networks of relationships and shared resources that improve participants' economic opportunities and professional satisfaction, while strengthening religious community through mutual support and shared mission. The child and family programming that urban churches develop reflects the unique challenges of raising families in expensive, fast-paced urban environments, where traditional family support structures often don't exist, and where parents face different pressures than their suburban counterparts. Urban churches create what sociologists call chosen family networks that provide community support for parenting challenges, educational decisions, and family formation in environments where extended families and stable neighborhood communities often aren't available. Journey Church in Brooklyn operates comprehensive family programming that includes childcare cooperatives, parenting education, financial literacy training, and educational advocacy that helps families navigate urban parenting challenges while building spiritual community around shared family values. The programming attracts young professionals who want to raise families in urban environments, but need community support that traditional extended family networks once provided. Participants report finding practical parenting resources, trusted childcare networks, and educational guidance through church connections while building spiritual community around family values. Pastor Nelson Searcy explains the strategic approach. Urban families face unique challenges around cost of living, school choices, safety, and community building. When churches provide practical family support organized around spiritual values, we serve real needs while building multi-generational community that strengthens everyone involved. The programming requires churches to invest in comprehensive family services rather than just weekend children's programming, but it creates deep community connections that strengthen religious commitment while serving essential urban family needs. The global and multicultural programming that successful urban churches embrace reflects both the international character of major urban centers and the opportunity to create religious community that transcends rather than reinforces cultural boundaries that often divide urban neighborhoods. Urban churches develop what missiologists call glocal identity, local community that's globally conscious and culturally diverse, rather than ethnically homogenous like many suburban congregations. Hillsong NYC created programming that celebrated the cultural diversity of New York while building unified spiritual community around shared values rather than shared ethnicity. Services incorporated music, art, and teaching styles from multiple cultural traditions while maintaining theological coherence and community identity. The approach attracted urban professionals from diverse cultural backgrounds who appreciated religious community that felt culturally familiar while providing opportunities to engage across cultural boundaries in ways that many urban contexts don't facilitate despite their diversity. Pastor Carl Lentz argued that multicultural programming served both practical and theological functions. New York is the world's most diverse city, but it's often culturally segregated. When churches create authentic multicultural community, we're both serving urban demographics and demonstrating spiritual values about human unity and dignity. The programming required significant investment in cultural competency, language services, and international partnership, but it created distinctive religious community that urban professionals couldn't find in ethnically homogeneous suburban churches or secular multicultural programming. The sustainability and environmental programming that innovative urban churches develop reflects both the environmental consciousness of urban professionals and the opportunity to demonstrate spiritual values through practical environmental action in contexts where environmental challenges are visible and immediate. Urban churches create what environmental activists call spiritual ecology, environmental programming that connects environmental stewardship with spiritual formation, rather than treating them as separate concerns. All Saints Church in Pasadena operates comprehensive sustainability programming that includes urban gardening, renewable energy installation, zero waste initiatives, and environmental justice advocacy that demonstrates spiritual values through practical environmental action while building community around shared creation care values. The programming attracts environmentally conscious professionals who appreciate religious community that takes environmental challenges seriously, rather than treating them as political issues separate from spiritual formation. Participants report finding practical environmental action and spiritual meaning through church-based sustainability initiatives. Environmental programming requires churches to invest in technical expertise, facility modifications, and community partnerships, but it creates opportunities for spiritual practice that addresses urgent contemporary challenges while building community around shared environmental values and demonstrating religious relevance to pressing social concerns. The future development of urban religious innovation continues as churches adapt to changing urban demographics, economic pressures, and cultural shifts that require ongoing creativity and flexibility rather than fixed programmatic approaches. Emerging challenges include gentrification pressures that displace both churches and congregants, increasing cost of living that affects both church budgets and member financial capacity, and cultural changes that require ongoing adaptation of programming and messaging to maintain relevance with evolving urban populations. Successful urban churches develop what organizational theorists call adaptive capacity, ability to modify programming, adjust strategies, and evolve approaches while maintaining core identity and mission in response to changing urban conditions. The most innovative churches create experimental programming, develop multiple revenue streams, build flexible physical spaces, and maintain cultural awareness that enables ongoing adaptation to urban change while serving consistent spiritual and community needs. Looking ahead, urban churches that thrive will likely continue developing hybrid models that integrate spiritual formation with practical community services, maintain cultural relevance while preserving theological depth, and create sustainable financial models that don't depend entirely on member donations, while serving diverse urban populations with varying economic capacities. The success of urban religious innovation demonstrates that spiritual community remains relevant in contemporary urban life when it's designed around actual urban needs, lifestyles, and values, rather than trying to recreate suburban or rural religious models in urban contexts that operate according to different social and economic dynamics. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of religious innovation in America's big cities. These urban churches are pioneering new forms of community that address some of the deepest challenges of contemporary city life: isolation, stress, meaninglessness, and disconnection, while creating spiritual resources that help people thrive in demanding urban environments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these innovations. Have you experienced anything like these urban religious communities in your own city? What do you think makes the difference between churches that thrive in cities versus those that struggle? How do you see spirituality and urban life intersecting in your own experience? Share your insights in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Professor Archive for more explorations into the unexpected ways contemporary communities are adapting to modern challenges. Until next time, keep exploring the fascinating intersections between faith, culture, and urban life.